Hi, welcome to the Career Corner. My name is Heather Swift, and I'm delighted to be your host. The purpose of the Career Corner is to help people move from career distress to career success. Today, my guest is Eric Lange. He's the Associate Executive Director for the 92nd Street Y. He's an expert in late career change and one of the oldest happy campers I know. Eric, welcome to the Career Corner.
Thanks. It's great to be back here with you.
So you were my very first guest
I know.
7 years
it's
ago.
It's hard to believe. We were both much younger then, except
we were.
You weren't, I was.
Oh,
You're
thank
still
you.
young.
Thank you. We're trying.
Okay.
We're trying. So do you remember what we spoke about
I
back
do,
then?
absolutely. We talked about people getting into the job market, and we talked about young people trying to get their career started, and I remember the talk, we called it From Backpack to Briefcase.
Yes, yes. And I have a copy for you of this antique now, almost. So today I thought it would be interesting to talk at the opposite end of the spectrum.
It's because of my gray hair. Right?
It is because you're a little more gray,
okay.
a little wiser, a little older.
A lot older.
But you're also at a new company.
I am. So I am, I'd like to consider myself a poster child for late career transition. So when we spoke last time, I worked for the Nielsen Company, the TV ratings business. I'd been there for 17 years and had spent about 36 years in the corporate world, always in human resource roles.
Yeah.
And I decided I was done with it, and I was not ready to retire. I was not old enough, nor did I want to, but I was looking to make some changes. And I left the Nielsen Company. I took the summer off. I went back to camp. So there's a little reference to the happy camper.
Yes.
And it's a long story, but we'll save it for another night. And ended up getting a job at the world-renowned 92nd Street Y in New York. And it's the largest Jewish community and cultural center in America. It's 143 years old right now.
Amazing. And
it truly is an amazing place. We do incredible things there. I was hired there as the Director of Human Resources, and about 2.5, 3 years ago was promoted to the Associate Executive Director of the Y. So I like to consider myself a bit of a poster child for making a successful late career transition. After 36 years in the corporate world, I made a significant move into the nonprofit world.
How difficult was that for you to change after being at one company for so long, to kind of have your own internal dialogue of what do I want to do next?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear about your process in that.
Sure.
Because a lot of people I work with are transitioning out, not always of their own accord after many years, and saying, okay, I know, like you said, I'm too young to retire. I'm not ready yet. I want to make more money and experience another career. What advice would you have for that? What was your process?
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to make a move. I knew it was something that was going to come at some point, and so I actually did some preparation for it. I actually hired a career coach.
I think that career coach has been on my show.
He has, and I was happy to make that connection
And
to
what
you.
is his name?
His name is
Yes.
Rich Largman.
Yes, it is.
In Morristown, and Rich, I had met Rich years earlier, never thinking that I would need a career person.
Because you've been helping everyone else with their careers.
It's what
all
I've
this
done
time. Yeah.
literally my whole career since I got out of college. And all of a sudden I was faced with being 59 years old, trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, and recognizing that, sometimes the doctor needs to go to the doctor. And I called Rich and I said, let's talk. And we did, and it was very obvious just over lunch that first time we got together that we were going to be a great team together. And I literally spent about a year working with Rich, helping to lay out a plan, and not so much that I wanted to go work at the 92nd Street Y, it never even crossed my mind, or even in the nonprofit world, just what was I looking for at this stage of my life? Because my kids were grown now, they were done with college, some of the financial issues they had changed for me, and I was done paying for the college, and I had an opportunity to, what do I want to do now? And it was a real freeing experience for me because I allowed myself, with Rich's help, to really get silly. I'll never forget probably the most significant thing he had me do. This may sound arrogant, I don't mean it this way. He said, write down all the things you're great at. And and I've used this technique with lots of people since, and people tend to start thinking about with their work minds. And I'm really good at conducting meetings or whatever it is. And I had a few things down, and Rich kept pushing me. He said, all right, get bigger, think deeper, think wider. And I had, my two favorite things were that I'm a really great parallel parker and that I have a really great sense of direction. And obviously none of those are work-related.
Yes.
But it got me as a training to be thinking much more broadly than I had thought. And by the time I was done, I had over 50 items on this list. That's where it sounds a little arrogant, but it really got me to
Well,
think.
for including parallel parking in it, so then I guess there's a long runway there, so that's good.
But what that was really helpful for me is to do a couple of things. One is to just expand my way of looking at what I wanted to do now, because it didn't have to be anything to do with work. Maybe I wanted to park cars. I mean, who knows? I didn't. But
you'd be a real cute Walmart greeter or a Home Depot greeter.
I've never been in a Walmart. I can honestly say I've never set foot in a Walmart.
It's not on your bucket list?
It's not there.
Okay, I think your wife is probably grateful for that.
She is.
She's also been on my show.
I've been to the Short Hills Mall though many times. But it helped me think really wide. I always used to joke that I wanted to be an omelet chef at a Marriott Sunday brunch thing. I didn't do that. But I allowed myself to think silly.
Outside the box. And
and nothing what I had done, but it was okay because I felt this enormous freedom to just get creative in my thinking. Turns out I took an HR job, but that's okay. But it was very exhilarating to be able to think, I could really do whatever I want to do now.
Yeah,
and
it's very freeing. And I think people, because we're so in this box, especially if you've taken on growing people, having children and having that responsibility, you're kind of anchored into more sane choices. But when you do reach those other stages, that freedom that comes with it, I think that's a great example of just letting your mind have fun to know, wow, I could really have a lot of different options and take a totally different trajectory.
Yeah.
Did you tap into your network at this time and talk to a lot of people?
I did. And actually what I did before that, yes, but before I even did that, I was determined I was going to take the summer off. Because I hadn't had a summer off since I was in college. And here I was. I left my job in June. What a great time to leave a job.
Perfect time.
I recommend it to everyone. If you're going to leave your job, do it in June. And I had the whole summer, and I said I'm not doing anything till after Labor Day. And if I could just go on a little aside, I was looking, what's the big thing I want to do this summer? And again, one of the things Richard talked to me with, you need some kind of transition, something. We couldn't figure out what it was. And as you know, I spent many years as a child going to sleepaway camp, and then I worked there for many years, and then 25, 30 years later, I got back involved with the same camp. My kids were back in the camp now. I got on the board of directors. I became chairman of the board, so I was a camp guy. And so I had the idea, let me call the director of the camp, who I knew, and ask if there's anything I can do to help out over the course of the summer. I called her. And her first question to me was, do I have to pay you? And I said, no, I'm okay. I don't need you to pay me.
She's like, now that opened up her outside the box.
It absolutely did, because camps don't have a lot of money. And I was shocked within 10 seconds. She says, well, I actually have something I'd like you to do. Would you consider chaperoning our teen trip this summer?
I remember when you did that.
And I said, okay.
It was on a bus, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. It was a long bus.
Okay.
I said, what does that mean? She says, well, we send 35, 15-year-olds to Florida, to all the theme parks in Orlando. And I said, well, I could do that. I could, fly down there, meet them there. And she said, no, you need to ride the bus. And I can tell you factually that from Hopewell Junction, New York, where the camp was, to Orlando is 22 hours each way, nonstop. Well, a couple of stops, but they changed drivers midway. But I did that, and what that was for me was a chance to kind of have a transitional event in my life.
Button.
Yeah, and something that mattered to me. I mean, I loved this camp; it was important to me. I was able to kind of relive some of my youth there, and here I was on this camp trip. And it's actually a funny story because what happened while I was on that trip, I'd gotten a phone call from a colleague of mine, a guy I'd worked with 25 years earlier, who called me and said, I know you're taking the summer off, but I heard about an opportunity, and it kind of has your name written all over it. And I said, I'm taking the summer off. I'm really not interested. I said, but who is it? And he said, well, the 92nd Street Y is looking for a head of human resources. And he said, and they have a big summer camp, and made me think of you. And he didn't know I was in Florida
on
then
a bus with teenagers
doing a summer camp thing. So it's kind of an ironic story. And so I said, well,
there's no such thing as accidents.
When you grow up in New York, you grow up, you know the 92nd Street Y. I said, well, how do you not talk to them? And so anyway, I did. I came back September 12th of 2011, the week after Labor Day, because I said I'm not going back till after Labor Day. I started working there, so it's just over 5 years now. And I never dreamed that I would end up in a nonprofit, let alone something as prestigious. Having worked for the Nielsen Company, the TV ratings business, I thought was a pretty well-known organization. I had no idea how much more well-known the 92nd Street Y is and the reputation that it has.
Interesting.
And it floored me. Hard adjustment, though.
Well, from biggest way from corporate to nonprofit?
Going from a, I don't know, $8 billion corporation to a $60 million operation.
Okay, so there's that.
There was, yes, the numbers were different.
Look, it did a little bit.
The scale was different, 35,000 employees to 300 full-time and 1,200 part-time. Everybody in one building versus operating in 100 countries.
Globally, yeah.
And so it took a big adjustment. And the biggest was really the numbers, the financials of operating in an environment that really you got to know everybody. I know everybody. I knew everyone pretty quickly because it was so small. And having to operate in that different kind of environment was a challenge at first because I was accustomed to, working for a pretty
that'd be a big challenge.
corporate environment where there were a lot of resources. Going into an environment where there were very few resources.
And when you first walked in there, were you like, okay, I have my work cut out for me here?
It didn't take long to realize what was that there was a lot that the
But
place
how great
needed.
for them, though, that you have the corporate mindset of all those years to bring that expertise.
Well, and I want to get into
Sure.
that because what we've done now over the last 5 years is really bring in a whole bunch of folks who came with similar type of corporate backgrounds, which was pretty novel then. We had one of our outside board members who was a former CEO of a Fortune 100 company who was involved in bringing me in and had this belief that there have to be people out there that have the corporate skill sets that are at points in their career, I give him all the credit, that they can really bring those corporate skills to an environment that frankly couldn't afford that in the past. And I took a big pay cut when I went there. It was okay. It was, I was conscious. I spent a lot of time working with Rich on adjusting my expectations of how that was going to work.
Because what is success? Success is so beyond the dollars.
But
right?
it takes a while to get to that point.
Yeah, I believe that.
And I struggled with that. And that was probably the number one issue for me was adjusting. Why would I want to go?
We're more than our income here.
Exactly. And that's a huge emotional issue and a psychological issue for people, I think, because I was, in
so.
HR, I dealt with people's compensation every day. I was always conscious about how much I made and what people made. And now I'm voluntarily going into an environment that I took a significant pay cut to. And the end of 5 years later, it was the single best decision I ever made. And I have really focused, and I want to continue to do this, to help people make similar type of decisions and understand the pros and the cons of all that, and help other people get to that place. Because so many of us at this age group, that 60s, who have had great careers, way too young to think about retiring, a lot of energy, still know they have more left in them, but what is that? And how do we figure that out? And I really see that as my mission going forward now for whatever I'm going to do next, is to help people to get to that point. Because
and not be scared to rewire and to relocate.
To really think out of the box. And going back to the comments we made about that list, and Rich was very helpful for me to do that.
Oh, that's great. So we're going to be taking a brief pause for a moment, and then we come back, we can continue our conversation.
Sounds great.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back with Eric Lange in the Career Corner after this message.
After 17 years working as a mason, Mike was laid off. I met him when he came into the library looking for help. He found a job opening, but the application was only online. Mike said he'd spent his entire life around tools, but had never used a computer. I showed him how, and he ended up applying for numerous jobs online. I saw Mike the other day. His new computer skills paid off. He's working again.
New Jersey libraries are transforming lives. Tell us your story.
Hi, welcome back to the Career Corner with my guest, Eric Lange. We're talking about late-in-life career transitions. So, Eric, when we just left our last dialogue, we were talking about the visionary that your colleague at the Y had, bringing corporate executives from corporate America into nonprofits. What would be some tips? How could people find the nonprofit that's right for them if they're thinking, you know what, I got let go, or I'm just ready for a change and I want to give back now? I think that's a very, very common cycle starting in the late 40s into 50s, 60s, where we start thinking more of, I want to give more than just, it's not all about the money anymore.
Right. So again, I was lucky because for me it was the camp connection. It really was. People would always ask me, why do you put the fact that you were the board member of your summer camp? I said, because it was an important part of who I was. It turned out to be the connector for me. Who would have ever thought that,
right,
to get the job that I'm in now? Because my friend saw that this opportunity was there, and he realized they had a summer camp. And so I know a guy who's a camp guy, and it was me, and an HR guy. So
it rang a bell for him.
It did, and it was so never not. So always. My English isn't as good.
I'm still picking up what you're putting down. That's okay.
So always let everything out there. Let everyone know what your passions and what your interests and your hobbies are. As silly as it may sound, there's nothing that it doesn't count necessarily. Mm-hmm. So for me, what I think, and I think it's an untapped area. There's and with no offense to a lot of the nonprofits out there, but many of them just simply cannot afford to hire the same caliber of people that the corporate world does. And that's not a criticism.
No, it's just what it is.
It's a fact.
They don't have the same funds. Yeah.
And because money is tight, they're fundraising. It's a different world. And so someone late in their career, if money is not your driver, and I think that's an important part of it, you have to get past that, however you need to get past it. But there are many, many nonprofits out there that would relish the thought of bringing people in that have the kinds of experience that they can only dream of getting inside. Mm-hmm. When I got to the Y, there were very, very few HR practices in place. And when you said, how did you know? I said, it was pretty clear what needed to be done there. Mm-hmm. For me, it wasn't really that hard to figure out what needed to be done. What was hard for me, and what's taken a long time, is not the what has to be done, it's the getting it done, because the cultural shift that's required.
Shifting that, yeah.
And so we brought in another guy to be the CFO, who had been a CFO at a public company. We brought in our head of marketing and programming, who spent 29 years at the New York Times and corporate
How about that nice finance guy? Is it Jim?
Yeah, that's who I'm talking about,
Okay,
who was a colleague of mine at Nielsen, who worked there. Our general counsel actually was the former general counsel.
That's amazing. So basically,
Nielsen.
92Y is the new Nielsen.
No, we're not going to say that. 92Y is the new 92Y. We brought in some really talented people who were at the place in their career that they were looking to do something different and could lend their expertise into helping to rebuild this world-class institution and help it get ready for another generation of service to the community and the world. And
the speakers you all attract is really phenomenal.
we have an amazing lineup of people there. I mean, last week we had Vice President Biden speaking in our auditorium, which was, I've met world leaders, I've met, you name the entertainers, politicians that come in every day. And that's just the small part of what we do.
Yeah, there's so many different aspects to the whole organization.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're most proud of is that we created Giving Tuesday. Many people around the world that are involved the first Tuesday after Thanksgiving, which has now become, this is the 5th year of Giving Tuesday. It started at the 92nd Street Y.
I don't think I knew that.
A lot of people don't know that because we don't brand it. We gave it as our gift to the world. And that's become the single largest philanthropic day, online philanthropic day around the world. It started with us. But my point, to do that required us to have people there that had skill sets very different than the kind of skill sets that this place needed for so many years when we were literally a community center on the corner of 92nd and Lexington, where most of our focus was internal. So much of what we're doing now, because of the changes in technology, have allowed us to really go much broader. And so people with technology backgrounds that a nonprofit wouldn't need before, there's a need for them.
You really
now.
need them now.
And you could go down a list of careers that we're looking at. And I think if you can figure out what's important to you, what matters to you, what do you think you might like doing, and reach out. I'd be shocked that a lot of those nonprofits wouldn't be interested in at least having a conversation. And the easiest thing to do is, I'd love to learn more about what you do. It costs you nothing.
Yeah.
And can I pick your brain for half an hour?
They call those informational meetings, informational interviews.
But we love doing that stuff. Yeah. Everyone loves doing that. People, I love it when people call me and say, tell me about how you made this transition. Because I love to help people do that, and I love to talk about it because I think it's a great story, and I think so many people need to have that encouragement from someone that's done it already, and it helps them figure it out. Not that I have any answers for anyone, because it's a very individual journey, even from knowing when you're ready to make it. For me, is I knew I wasn't happy going to work anymore, and I said, I'm done. That took time for me to get there. I had great long history there, and then it wasn't the same for me. I didn't have the thrill anymore. But everyone's story is different. The question is to figure it out and hear what don't be afraid to listen to your own feelings about this, because your gut's usually right about these things. If something's not right, you typically know it. And then get out there and explore. And it means getting out there. It doesn't mean sitting in your home office sending out resumes or sending out letters. It means getting on the phone, networking, going to networking events. I mean, you've taught this for years.
Yeah.
It's a very hands-on, face-to-face kind of operation there to get out there.
I think part of it too is just like you mentioned about thinking about all things as possibilities. I have a friend who is 72, and she just got certified to be a yoga instructor like a year ago, and she does yoga for older people. Up to I think she has someone who might be 98 in her class, and she sits in her little chair, but is appropriate yoga. But she loves it, and she's also volunteering at a flower shop, and she's learning new things that she's never done before. But she went out to Hawaii and got her certification, and it's just it's refreshing talking to her, because people want to think, after this certain age, I have to retire dreams or ideas or what's possible, when now more than ever, there's so many things people are creating online with businesses, being able to connect to people. I see things about nursing home people and younger people connecting for living spaces, for exchange of different goods and services, like a bartering almost for different things.
Yeah, and if we do that, it's not a bartering, but we have a senior program, a very large 800-person program, senior program at the Y. We have a nursery school with 170 kids. We bring them together.
That's
and
awesome.
So, but what do we need? We need people that have geriatric skills. We need people that have child care skills, and not child care, but early childhood education. So there's a ton of kinds of opportunities out there. Explore. Figure out what gets you excited, and don't be afraid to get out and ask people about it.
I think people, there is that idea of, over 45, and looking for a job, and how quickly, that number seems still very low to be concerned about being hired because of ageism in the workforce. But there has to be a lot of jobs where, like you're mentioning, they value that experience and not to be scared to go for it.
Right. And one of my favorite lines has been, I got hired for this job because of my gray hair, not in spite of it.
Okay.
And I think part of it is, they needed someone that had a lot of experience. And the gray hair, in my case, was really a positive. And you've got to find those organizations. There's a lot of organizations out there. If you walk in and everyone's less than 30, that's probably not where you're going to end up. I mean, it's probably not that there's anything wrong with that.
Did you see The Intern with De Niro?
I did.
I thought that was cute. Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to talk about is flexibility, because now's the time that you can negotiate a deal. Just because you've always worked in a corporate environment and it's been this full-time, 60 hours a week kind of environment, who's to say that you can't say, I only want to work 3 days a week now, or 4 days a week, or whatever. And I'll tell you, we have deals. I make deals with people like that all the time, because we have that flexibility. I'm not driven by the same motivation for my organization that I used to be, which was, I don't have to worry about a stock price. I don't have to worry about those things. I have to worry that we're healthy, obviously, financially. But, there are programs that we run, we're not there to make money. And that's a very refreshing approach for someone who spent his entire career.
It must have been really hard to unplug from that, because most of us are driven in our corporate lives that it's all about the dollar.
It was so refreshing. You can take it to the extreme. I remember one person telling me once, shortly after I got there, no, you don't understand, Eric. We're a nonprofit. We're not allowed to make money, which clearly is not the case. But we're not driven by that, And I think whether it's a nonprofit or any other mission-driven organization, if you can get behind the mission, and I think it's pretty cool. And if you can believe in it and you can really, you really embrace it, it's really fun. And, as miserable as I was that last year I was working in the corporate world, I'll take that and multiply it by 1,000, how happy I am now and have been, because I really look forward to going into work every day knowing that what we're doing there is helping people. I see seniors, I see kids, I see after-school programs, I see world leaders I get to listen to, and intellectuals who come and talk about their latest books or whatever. It's just the variety of programs there. it's very rewarding. And there's a ton of these kind of places out there. It doesn't have to be where I am, but there are so many nonprofits doing so many great things, needing people today. And I feel like I'm pitching the nonprofit world. I guess I am, just because it's an untapped market, I think.
Yeah, and I think people might not always think of that, but to drive it home with, like, think of what are your priorities, what's a cause that's near and dear to your heart, and kind of be open to that. So we have just about a little over 2 minutes left. Were there any resources that you would recommend that people would check out? Or, the things that to reflect on, even like exercises. You mentioned about making the lists of, what you're good at, and just to kind of really just then kind of connect the dots.
So that was one of them. The other thing that I focused on, and again, working with a coach, which I could not recommend more highly to anyone, was I did a list of what do I want my life to look like.
Beautiful.
And I spent a lot of time. It was very hard to do, and it was this time I had to be limited to what are the 10 things you'd like your life to look like going forward. And I had a list that took me probably 3 months to fine tune it to get it to where I wanted it to be. And when I got this job offer, the first thing that Rich had said to me was, "Okay, let's go look at the list. Let's look at your list. Pull out your list. Let's see how this job does with satisfying those issues." I hit 8 out of 10 of them.
Ooh, that's good.
It was great because I'm thinking, do I really want to go back into a regular kind of job? And I wasn't sure. And when we went down, okay, let's see. It was 8 of the 10 items that were on my list, this job satisfied. And we came very quickly. It was a no-brainer, frankly, that, I probably should do this. And I can tell you 5 years later, I've never been happier.
It's like the planets aligned for you.
They did.
You had your summer off. You got to go back to camp.
And I will say, this summer, you have no idea, this summer, I got to run the 92nd Street Wise Day Camp, which is the largest day camp in New York, 1,200 kids. I went to camp every day from Maplewood to Pearl River, New York.
You're a tall guy. Those kids must have just looked up to you.
They were little. They were really little. But I was the director of our summer camp this summer.
That's awesome.
And
did you ever thought you would ever have been doing something like
45 years after my last summer at camp,
Yeah.
I got to go back to camp. And
that is why you're such a happy camper.
I'm the happy camper. And I
that's what the tattoo says. I love mom and happy camper.
I don't have an I love mom. I do, but I don't have a tattoo. But I have a lot of T-shirts now. And so look, I think it's out there. You got to find it. I was lucky. No question that it kind of came to me.
But I
also was ready for it.
You did the internal work, though.
I did. I spent a year ahead of time to be ready for when that call came, so that I was in the right mindset and the right place to take advantage of it.
No, that's like the best of both worlds when that happens. When worlds collide.
Yes.
The inner work and the outer work.
It's a good thing.
We're just about out of time. So thank you so much for coming back to the Career Corner and sharing all of your wisdom over the past multiple years here since leaving corporate America.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And thank you all for tuning in. Please check us out on YouTube, where we have lots of great videos all around career advice and support. Until we meet again, I wish you much career success.